Okay, class, so this week we're going to develop an interior and an exterior. We're going to start looking at how to develop interior and exterior spaces, okay? So one of the things that you really need to think about is how light and shadow uh, look, okay? And I really do urge you to document or find reference pictures for how shadows fall because and how light appears, because it's really hard for even the most advanced artist to imagine that accurately, okay? We're also going to work on drawing ellipses in perspective, which are circles from us, that have been the shape is changed to an ellipse due to the fact that they're in perspective, all right? And the role of the shadow in the vanishing point and in the creation of cast shadows, scaling figures and objects within an interior space, okay? And I'll let you guys go over this. This is just really telling you to really take your time to look at the material and the lectures and the videos carefully, okay? So drawing interiors. Okay, so in terms of 1 point perspective, imagine that you are inside a box facing a wall, and so the back of the room, we're really not going to see any perspective on that, okay? So let's just look at what's happening here. Okay, you can see the formation of the box, all right? And that's all just because everything is receding to the vanishing points, all right? There's how you do a window. There are a couch, a very simple couch. There are some arms on the couch. There is a table. There is some pictures on the wall. Here's an object at an angle, so that might get confusing. Notice that that object actually has its own vanishing point, okay? So that's where you'll apply what we talked about last week about changing angles. The vanishing point is on the same horizon line, okay? That's important. And here we add another object, okay? And then the details. And detail and texture, rounding off forms, all of that really help to make the image look professional, complete, interesting to the eye, okay? You don't have to be the best draftsperson in the world to do that either. Okay, let's talk a little bit about scale and proportion, okay? So notice that this figure is larger than this one because it's closer to us, and they are in perspective, all right? So the top of these figures and the bottom of these figures recede to a vanishing point. So they fit within the lines that we would draw, the guidelines for any vanishing point. Okay, here they're out of scale, all right? So it's a little confusing to look at. This figure appears to be on a higher plane than this figure, which doesn't make sense in terms of perspective. Also, the bookshelf is in the wrong scale. It doesn't look as if it's sitting on the floor. The door looks a little too low. See how these subtle differences make a big difference? So do take your time to compare those two images. Here are some basic kind of silhouettes. Here's some information on how to scale your figure, okay? And I talked about using the vanishing point to do that. So you can see where the horizon line is hitting them, and they're both, the tops of their heads and their feet are both within the guidelines. Okay, that was what I was talking about in the initial discussion. Do take your time to watch this video. And one other thing I wanted to mention is here's some basic proportioning for the human figure. The height is usually about 7 to 8 heads tall, so whatever size the head is. The hips are about halfway up the figure. All right, so the legs will take up half the height of the figure. So just a few little tips. Some people may never have drawn a figure before. Okay, ellipses. This can get confusing for people. I do encourage you to watch the video and do the exercise. If you do that, you will find that it's really not that hard. One thing to remember though when doing ellipses is that if you have a vase, for example, the top of the vase will have the same foreshortening in the ellipse as the bottom. Okay, you may not be able to see all of it, but it will. And let me just show you what I'm talking about really quickly. Disregard this picture, but I'm going to draw over here. Okay, so if I had a vase, oops, if I had a vase and the top of it were an ellipse like that, and let's say it was smaller at the bottom ellipse needs to be roughly the same angle. It doesn't have to be the same width, okay, but this distance needs to be similar, all right? And let's say, oops, wrong shape. Let's say that these, oops, sorry. These were the sides of the object. Please disregard the drawing in the background. It won't let me draw and just can't create a new. So those are the sides. It may be that we won't be able to see the back of this ellipse, but it will still have the same angle. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. All right. Okay, here's an exercise. Please take your time to do that. This will show you how to inscribe circles, which is what helps you to get the ellipse correct. All right. See how it changes, and in reference and how those guidelines once again help you determine the width. All right. This is how to do a circle within a square using a diamond. You may need to do that at the beginning. It may get easier for you as you get more practice to draw those ellipses without having to do that, but I definitely urge you to use that technique initially. And here's doing one in 2-point perspective. Okay? Just like geometry class. Cylinders, similar concept. Okay, it's just you're doing the inscribing on one end or one surface and then developing it. Okay? Please do take the time to watch that video. Here's some information about the orientations of a cylinder. A can is a vertical cylinder. A wheel is a horizontal shallow cylinder. And a tube is a horizontal cylinder in which the circle side is parallel to the picture plane. Okay? And lights and shadows. Okay. So please take note of the fact that you have very dark darks and very light lights and very many ranges in between. Very often this is what I see in student work, is that they forget to do the whole range of values. So here are where the highlights might be, here are the lighter values, here are the medium values, here are the dark values, once again darkest values. So that's at least right there 5 different values. And then the cast shadow, which has modulation. It's not just a solid. It has different variations of gray in it. Okay? And then you have reflections. All right? Which is always underneath the bottom of a shadow. There is a reflection on the object. You can see it most in the prism, or yeah, the teepee shape right there, the cone. Okay? And also, there's nothing wrong with using real life as a reference point. Just make sure that you are consistent. Here's some more information about cast shadows. Okay, that's the shadow, and it is in perspective. Okay, so it's in perspective with the vanishing point as the light source. All right, the objects are in perspective with the vanishing point being on the horizon line, but the shadows for the objects are also in perspective, in this instance 1-point perspective, with the light source being the vanishing point. Okay, so that's a really easy way to document that. Okay, and here's a light source which is much higher. All right, so the shadow gets shorter. Here's a lower one, longer shadows which actually go in different directions. And there's a light source that's about medium. Okay, one thing that none of what there, here's what it would look like from the side. Notice how there's consistency. Okay, and here's one more from the high side. So this is super useful information for your imagined interior, so check it out closely. Shading techniques. This is important, okay? Try to use neat lines and be consistent. Take your time. And if there's too much white showing beneath the whatever technique you use, it loses some of its oomph. So this is actually the texture on the carpet. It's not actual shading. Looks like this person has done some nice smudging, and they've done a nice job of distinguishing between texture and their shading techniques. Okay, so practice some of that. Do watch the video. And here's a little bit about how to shade basic shapes. Notice the value range from dark to light. Notice the reflected light. Okay, so do take your time to look at this carefully. And please note the dark darks and the light lights. Contrast really helps create the illusion of volume and depth. Finishing your drawing, here's just some tips on how to make it look good. Detail, taking your time, texture, shade to eliminate outlines. Super important. Rather, an outline automatically flattens something out. So if you shade to come right up to the edge of something, it looks more three-dimensional. And let's see if we can find a nice example of that. You're going to have to watch that video. I don't really want to show you a video within a video, so please take your time to watch that. Okay, let's look at our assignment and see if we can find a good example. So for this assignment, make sure that you take the time to map out everything, including your cast shadows. Alright, and you can use 1 or 2-point perspective. And for assignment 3, here's where, see the range of values. Notice how there's very little outlining. It's the shading that creates the edges. Okay, that's what I was just talking about. Alright, good luck with this. Let me know if there are any questions.